And welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue our conversation around C. Today, let's go ahead and discuss functions, specifically functions that do not have a return value, or as we more commonly know them from our world of Java, void functions. So when we start looking at functions, these of course are referring to blocks of code which only run when they are called. You can pass data, which we are very familiar with the term parameter, into a function. Now, functions are used to perform certain actions, and they're very important for us to be able to use or reuse code. We define that code once, and then we can use it multiple times. Functions in C serve the exact same purpose as the functions that we saw in Python, which are the exact same purpose and role as methods from Java. Now, we of course have seen a function in C, which is the main function, and this function is the one that is used to actually execute code. So let's actually look at creating a function. So we want to create or declare our own function. We simply specify the name of the function followed by parentheses and curly brackets. So, for example, void my function, open close parentheses, curly brackets, printf. I just got executed. All right, cool. The code is running. Now, what if we actually want to call that function? Well, let's use that same function we just saw and see how it works. Well, first thing you have to understand, of course, we already know this, but just to clarify, when we declare a function, it does not mean that it's going to be executed immediately. Instead, it's going to be executed when it's called. So if we want to call that function, which we just saw, we're going to write the function's name followed by two parentheses, open and close, and then a semicolon. So in our main function, for example, we'll say int main, open close parentheses, curly bracket, my function, open close parentheses. This calls the function, and then of course it just returns 0 because that's what we need to keep the compiler happy. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that, just like we would expect in many other languages, is that a function can be called multiple times. Now, let's go keep this conversation going by discussing how we can use parameters and arguments. Information can be passed to functions as a parameter. Parameters act as variables inside the function. In fact, these are local variables that we are already very familiar with. Parameters are specified after the function name inside of those parentheses. And we get as many parameters as we want. We just separate them with a comma. So here I have two different examples of functions, and you can see we have both these are using a char name array. But the second one has also an additional parameter, additional argument of int age. And of course, this is a very simple function for us to use here. Now, one thing you'll notice is that a couple of functions pass arrays as function parameters. And this is a perfectly viable thing for us to be able to do, is to pass arrays in for a function. And as we just saw, we can use a char array for when we want to get a string to use in our functions. And of course, that was just char, the name of the array, and then pass that in. Now, we are going to hold off on further demonstration of this until we have introduced arrays properly for C. But for now, this is probably the only thing we want most because we want to be able to start manipulating strings a little bit. And so let's go ahead and look here at some sample C code. You can see this is very similar to the example that we had just looked at with our char name array. And of course, we have int age. And of course, it's almost identical to what we have. But we, of course, have some code here in our main that shows how we can invoke that function. So I went and named this function print name and age, and you can see I called print name and age here, and I call it a second time with different parameters, which means I should expect to say, hello Alexis, you are 15 years old, in new line character, so it goes to the next line, and then of course, hello Brittany, you are 14 years old. Let's go ahead and run that quick. And we get hello Alexis, you are 15, and hello Brittany, you are 14. Perfect. Again, this is a pretty straightforward process for us to be able to use and get used to manipulating with different kind of things. It isn't anything that is new. One of the things you might have started noticing as we start exploring some of these other languages is there's a lot of similarity to how you approach certain problems and how you might start writing your functions, how you might start solving them. And keep that in mind as we then look at our next lesson when we're actually going to do the same thing, but we're going to ask ourselves, well, this is great for void functions, but what if I wanted to return a value like an integer? Or I want to get a value like a char. How are those going to work?